You're watching 13 WMAZ Law Call, sponsored by Macon Law Firm, Reynolds, Horn, and Servant. Your rights, your calls, live. This is 13 WMAZ Law Call.
And hello and welcome to Law Call. I'm Morgan Dukes. And tonight is a good night if you have a question about anything pertaining to the law, because tonight is all about asking us anything. And with us tonight to answer questions about anything is Carl Reynolds of Reynolds, Horn, and Servant. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, Morgan. How are you? Good to see you.
Good. Always good to see you. And I have another great attorney from Reynolds, Horn, and Servant, Wendell Horn. How you doing?
Doing very well. Glad to be here tonight.
Well, it's good to see both of you tonight. And again, our topic is Ask Us Anything. So that's what we're going to get into. But first, before we do anything else, Carl, I want to ask you a question. Each and every week, just over your shoulders, we get a glimpse of what looks like a courtroom. So why don't you tell us what's going on behind you and how significant it is to your practice?
I'll be glad to, Morgan. This is a courtroom. We came into this building in, I think, 2002. And we built a courtroom in the center of the building. Now, prior to that, we had been downtown at 850 Walnut Street, but we have been doing what we call focus groups or mock trials for probably the last 40 years. And we do that in a simple way. We'll go to a mall or somewhere that allows us to set up a table and put out questionnaires and ask people if they want to participate in a jury trial research project. They then fill out the paperwork with their name, rank, serial number, married, single, owner, renter, etc. We bring those back and select them from that and get anywhere from 15 or 20 to up to 40. And they then have a time to come in, and we instruct them as to what we're going to do. We don't let them know who we represent. We just simply say, this is for information. It is to help us and help the court in finding out how you think about this particular case. Now, what we do is then we'll put them in a box and present the case to them, just as if they were in court. At the end of that, we will have them go to separate places. They have to each one makes a verdict as if they were the only juror. Then they have to make a verdict that speaks for all of them. And when that process is finished, they come back into the courtroom and we're able to ask them questions, and they participate and offer their own thoughts about the case, the clients, etc. It's just a good way to find out if there are any hidden biases in the case, how people generally think about the case, whether there are any unique questions of fact or law that they want to know about. It helps us prepare the case for trial. And as I say, we've been doing this for about 40 years, and it always works to our great advantage, or to the great advantage of our clients, is what I should say. It's an interesting process. It, when we had been doing it for the past 20 years, then when we designed and built this building, we just put the courtroom right in the middle of it. So whether you call it a focus group or you call it a mock trial, it's the same thing. It is to get feedback from the jury.
And it's worked all these years. So that's the most important thing. You got some good results, no doubt. No doubt. Now, you mentioned a word in your explanation there, that four-letter word, jury. And I want to throw this question to Wendell, because Wendell, so many people wonder sometimes, how is a jury selected for their particular case?
And Morgan, that's a little bit incorrect. A jury is not really selected. You end up by exclusion with 12 people that are most acceptable to each side. Each side in a civil case gets 6 strikes. The jurors are questioned to vet out their biases and that type of thing. And then each side gets a strike, and then the other side will take another strike. And you do that back and forth till 6 jurors are excluded by each side. So you end up with 12 people that might not be who you want, but they're the most acceptable to each side.
Okay. Wow. Well, you know, again, we learn something new every day. That's why this show is called Ask Us Anything. Now, Carl, you know, you were working on a case that I really kind of want to get into a little bit because it talks about the power the power that you have as an attorney working on a particular case. So I'm going to stop talking and give you an opportunity to explain what that case was all about.
Actually, this is a case that we had discussed earlier. It involves a man who was coming from McDonough. He was a sales manager of an automobile dealership up there, a wonderful guy. Coming home from work, going to his home in Warner Robins, and he was proceeding south on 475. At about the same time and place, a tractor trailer truck was proceeding south on Highway 75, I-75. Those two interstate highways merge just south of Macon. He was coming in to the right of the truck. As the truck merged from the left toward the right, the truck had a blowout and it kind of shot forward, and actually the rear end of the truck hit the front end of our client's car. And as you can see from the pictures, it's nothing short of miraculous that he lived, and he was badly injured and in fact unable to speak to any investigators at the scene. They came and had him transported immediately to the hospital in order to save his life, which they did, I'm happy to say, but with really, really serious injuries that have affected him for his whole life.
Oh,
the point of the story is this. The way the wreck happened, it appeared as though the front of his vehicle struck the back of the tractor trailer truck. In actuality, the tractor trailer truck came over and to the front of his vehicle, and because of the flat tire, and he hit the vehicle, and then the pictures you see are what happened to his car. I wish you could see a top of an aerial view of the way the merger occurred, but that's basically how it was. Point of the story was when the investigating officers got there, all they had to go on was the truck driver's story. And of course, what he told them, and this was with his dispatcher on the line while he was talking to them, is that our client rear-ended the truck and caused the wreck. So within a couple of 3 days, his wife got in touch with us. We did as we do with all. We immediately went out, investigated the scene, took pictures, got an expert involved, and commenced a thorough investigation. In the course of that, we found 2 eyewitnesses who saw the whole thing and were able to refute what the truck driver had said. Well, after that, we filed suit, went through discovery, and I'm happy to say that we obtained a tremendous result for this wonderful guy who was badly injured.
Wow. Well, I'm glad there is a happy ending to such a horrific story, especially when you have to go in and try to prove everything. Listen, we're going to take a quick break right now and then come back with more questions, because tonight it's all about Ask Us Anything. And then, of course, Wendell Horn has a case that he would like to share with us as well. All of that's coming your way next, right here on Law Call.
You're watching Law Call on 13 WMAZ with personal injury attorney Carl Reynolds, who has recovered more than $500 million for his clients, dedicated to helping injured Georgians for more than 50 years, plus support from his Macon law firm of Reynolds, Horn, and Servant, including attorney Wendell Horn, focused on protecting the rights of car and truck wreck victims across the state, and attorney B.J. Servant, aggressively representing those injured by medical malpractice, hosted by award-winning broadcaster Morgan Dukes, featuring guests from across Middle Georgia. Your rights, your calls, live. This is Law Call on 13 WMAZ.
And welcome back to Law Call. I'm Morgan Dukes, and with me tonight, Carl Reynolds and Wendell Horn from Reynolds, Horn, and Savant right here in Macon, two great personal injury attorneys to answer your questions, because tonight is Ask Us Anything. And you've already sent your email questions in, so thank you for that. So gentlemen, let's get to them, okay? Let's see if we can answer some of these questions. The first question comes in and it says, we see and hear commercials for so many different lawyers these days. It's hard to know who's who. And what's the best way to find the right lawyer for your legal needs? Now, that's a very fair question, because there's so many commercials out there inundating us every day. Where do you start? How do you know who to call?
Morgan, I'm going to defer that question to Carl, because I have very strong feelings about that, and he would water them down a little bit. So I'm going to let him answer that question.
Okay.
I don't really know how much I can water them down. I think we probably are on the same page about that. But in answer to the question, try to give legitimacy to the question. I would say this: when you see commercials on TV of a lawyer who claims to be heroic, who claims to always get really high dollars and to get them quick and easy, you need to steer away from that lawyer or that firm. I mean, some of them tout how big they are. Some of them brag about their own personal matters, or they have a client on there who will give a testimonial. If it's a big budget operation, I would tend to stay away from it. If it's somebody just speaking plainly and truthfully from their heart, who you can tell doesn't really care about advertising, those are the people I would listen to. I don't know if I can explain to an audience how to differentiate those. I know lawyers can tell. You can look at the product and tell whether or not that's somebody who really practices law. And I would give you this as an additional piece of advice. If you call any lawyer and you go in to see that lawyer, and who you see is either an investigator or a case manager or a paralegal, and you don't see a licensed lawyer, licensed to practice law in this state, but you see somebody who he is managing, who is not a lawyer, you don't need to be with that lawyer. Now, before long, I think the way things are going, lawyer advertisements are going to be about like the Yellow Pages were a few years back. There's so many of them, they become almost meaningless. So we go back to the way that we've always done it, talk to people who've used lawyers, who know the kind of work that lawyers do, and get recommendations on it. I don't care if it's somebody who wrote your will or who handled your cousin's divorce case, but somebody who actually practices law and deals with clients on an everyday basis. Those people will refer you to the kind of lawyer you need if you have a case that involves a significant injury with good coverage and has some complexity to it. Then you need to search out a lawyer who does real work.
Well, all right.
Then. Add to that, I may not have been as strong as you wanted me to.
Well, I would add something to that also. I would be very wary of a law firm that advertises will come to you, and that they send people out to your home to sign the case up, because typically it's not going to be a lawyer, it's going to be a caseworker. It's invaluable to go into the law office and see what kind of operation they got, and see who the people they have, the support staff, and to, as Carl mentioned, meet with the lawyer that's going to handle the case.
All right. Well, that's a very good point. Thank you, Wendell, for bringing that up. And since we have you right now and your voice is the one that we're listening to, why don't you tell us about your case? What have you been working on that you wanted to share with us tonight?
This is a case we resolved about a year ago, Morgan, that occurred several years earlier on Christmas Eve night. Our client had left Savannah early in the evening and was traveling to his girlfriend's house that was up near Macon. And on the way, while he was traveling on I-16, he was rear-ended by a drunk driver and was knocked down an embankment, vehicle overturned. And at the end of the wreck, he was knocked unconscious and was unconscious when the EMTs arrived. He was life flighted to the medical center here, unconscious. Nobody knew who he was. His identification that he had in the car was dispersed and somewhat lost somewhere in the wreck. So nobody knew where he was. The girlfriend later that evening found out that, hey, he hadn't arrived when he should have. They started calling the family, and finally it was only the next day that they were able to locate him here in the hospital in Macon. But we looked at the case, and it's very important to go investigate a case. We realized that the drunk driver had received the alcohol from one of your quick stop kind of establishments where he'd gone in and purchased the beer. And when we filed the lawsuit and took the deposition and testimony of the driver that was intoxicated, every purchase of alcohol he had made that day, and I think it was like 20 some odd beers, was paid for with a credit card. So we were able to go back and see each establishment that he bought the beer from. So we filed what's called a dram shop law against the establishment that sold it, all the establishments. There was 3 that sold him the beer because under the law, a dram shop law is such that if an establishment sells or serves alcohol to someone that's in a clear state of drunkenness or inebriation, and they know that, or have reason to know that that driver is going to get in a car and drive, they got a duty not to sell the alcohol and to stop him from driving. And that was not what had happened, and we made a substantial recovery on that case.
Wow, isn't that something? Kind of sad, but thank you for the work that you did in that case. Hey, listen, we're going to take a quick break right now, but we're going to come back and we're going to get to more of your questions, because tonight we're asking or answering the questions to Ask Us Anything. And we've got 2 attorneys to do just that. I'm Morgan Dukes, and this is Law Call. If you have further questions for Carl Reynolds or Wendell Horn, you can reach them both right here in Macon at Reynolds, Horn, and Savant. Go on and give them a call at 478-405-0300. You can find them on the web at www.reynoldsinjurylaw.com, and be sure to follow them on Facebook. They're on social media at Reynolds, Horn, and Savant. All right, go look for them and you'll find a whole lot of good information. Gentlemen, it's I appreciate you being here tonight. It's late and everything, but you have answers in you and people have questions. So let's get to another question tonight. This email question wants to know, how much do you charge for your services? Somebody's watching right now and they may need your services and might be a little apprehensive. So how do they go about getting in contact with you, and how much would you charge them?
Well, Morgan, that's a good question that everybody should understand. When you go to a lawyer, it's fair game to ask up front what you charge and how do you charge. And it really depends on the kind of work that you need done. If it's a criminal matter, for instance, most lawyers doing criminal work, whether it's anything from DUI to murder, they will come up with a certain amount of money that you will pay over to them to put in their escrow account, and then they will bill out of that escrow account on the basis of what the value of their time is. And again, it's fair game for you to ask what they do, how they bill, and how you are protected. So that's one way of doing it. I think a lot of divorce lawyers do the same thing. Now, in terms of tort law or injuries, negligence law, which is what we do, they're usually done on what's called a contingent fee contract. Again, if you've got a case that needs investigating, where the liability is not clear and the law firm maybe doesn't know if they want to take it or not, they will give you that information up front, but you will execute an agreement that gives them a percentage of whatever you recover. And that could range anywhere from 25% to 50%. Depending on whether it's a very complex case that requires a lot of outlay of money that the law firm is going to advance, or whether it's a simple, straightforward negligence case where that there's going to be a settlement. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, of course. I remember one time years ago, we had a lady come in. She was, I think she was a CPA, and her husband was a CPA. And he was hit and killed by a car driven by two young men who worked for a computer company. And the limit of liability on the automobile was $50,000. Now, this was a wrongful death of a professional man. And she wanted to know what it would cost her to proceed with it. Well, the fact of the matter is, given the clear liability in that case, she didn't need a lawyer to get the $50,000. The insurance company would have jumped in her lap. The backstory is this. These guys worked for a company. They were, in fact, on company business. I keep losing my earpiece. They were on company business, at least we contended they were. The company denied that they were on company business. The company had $1 million policy.
Wow.
So we made her a proposition. We said, we will charge you $5,000 to investigate the case. If we can't come up with more coverage and insurance, that will be the end of your obligation to us. During the and the $5,000 would go toward the contingent fee if we took the case. We investigated, worked it, found out through their logs that they were actually on an assignment from the company. So then, rather than the $50,000 that they were limited to, we found there was $1 million, $1,050,000. We then took it on a contingent fee. I think it was 1/3, and gave her credit for the $5,000 that she had paid. So there is many ways to work out a fee arrangement as there are arrangements, but you should always ask first. Wendell, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I will add, because we see this all the time. When the injuries far exceed the amount of insurance available, or that appears to be available, there are a lot of lawyers that'll take that on a 1/3 contingency fee, write one letter, collect a big payday at the expense of the client. And, we try to operate under the theory that if we can't help the client and put more money in the client's pocket, then we aren't doing the client right. And that's not the way we've operated and never have.
And we don't charge a fee.
That's right.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So in that case, they just simply need to give you a call, since you're right here in Macon anyway. So if you have further questions for Carl Reynolds or Wendell Horn, then give them a call, 478-405-0300. Gentlemen, I thank you for being with us tonight. It's been good. Thank you for answering these good questions. All
right, Morgan. Thank you. It has been a good show. We enjoyed it.
All right. Yes, sir. Until next time, listen, on behalf of all of us here at LawCall, we say good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.